Hi, everyone. For me, national parks have always been about the meaningful stories found within them. That's what drew me to this line of work. Today, I'd like to attempt to frame up my ideas about a new connection between the work that all Park Service employees do and the reason we have parks. If I had to describe what I see as the status quo, I've been in this line of work for about 14 years. I've been to 8 parks. I've seen a goodly different number of operations. What I've seen is a lot of dedicated people doing their jobs in all different divisions, but I don't really see a lot of these employees realizing or being told by their supervisors why they're here or how their work is connected to the reason we have parks. Most park employees seem, based on my conversations with them, to take the meaningful story in the park for granted. Maybe they think that story takes care of itself. I want everyone to understand that that story needs constant care, but also that everyone working in a park plays a role in the maintenance of park meaning, hence that same story. This is an area where interpreters can lead by embracing an internal leadership role, teaching others how their work has an interpretive element. What I'm advocating is a change in perception from what interpretation means as a function of park operations. In my view, it isn't just providing external interpretive services like programs or written products or working in information desk. Interpretation is the Park Service's comprehensive function. It deals with and promotes connecting people to meanings inherent in a place. It is, in my view, a much bigger umbrella than most people realize because it contains everything the service does. Interpretation answers the inherent so what question that I think is implied in the Organic Act. To help us thrive and flourish as an agency, I believe a consensus where we identify and embrace why we are here, all here, and what all employees do, and why we're here to benefit the public is clear and understood. Secondly, I have a hope that one day interpretation is viewed as a respected function by everyone in the Park Service. The superficial assumption I hear frequently is that interpretation is the easy, non-serious job anybody can do, and it takes funding away from real work that others do. The interpretive profession is not well understood. The power inherent in parks comes from the fact that they are sacred. Direct interpretation explores that sacredness. Interpretation keeps these meaningful fires lit in parks, and that is something non-interpreters that's something that interpreters have not promoted to their non-interpretive colleagues. I've asked park employees how national parks really benefit the public. I want to know, what do they think? How do they view their job? How do they view their place in the organization? Does their work have an interpretive component? And most important, they know why they're doing what they're doing. The biggest surprise was when I asked the question, do you think the Park Service is a land management agency or an idea management agency? It was surprising to me how many people still feel that the Park Service is first a land management agency. They openly disagreed with the concept that it managed ideas over land. On top of that, the knee-jerk reaction from some, when I asked the question, would say things like, well, it's typical for someone like yourself to want to think your work is the most important. And at that point, I have to correct them and say, no, that's not what I said. What I said was I suspect interpretation is the most mission-critical function because it answers the so what question implied in the Organic Act. The pushback I got during all these conversations showed me how far we have yet to go to help our entire workforce of 20,000 see that they're part of an idea management agency that, in my view, happens to manage land and facilities rather than the other way around. The idea for the place came before the place. The view that we're just a government agency doing governmental functions and delivering government products, that's not an inspirational paradigm, and it conflicts strongly with the reason the citizenry maintains a system of parks. Parks promote visionary, sacred ideas that are an uplifting force in society. These protected places help everyone find pathways to self-improvement, self-realization, and transcendence. These are powerful raw materials, and that's why we have parks. But, I don't think those resources are just for visitors. I think employees can find strength in that meaning as well, and applied then to their work. But the thing is, I've had a lot of conversations with these folks, and I don't see them making this connection on a daily basis. And I think that that's unfortunate, because I think there's a real strong connection that they could make in their own daily work between the meanings of the park and what their tasks they're doing is in that park. Would they feel more job satisfaction if, for instance, they frame their duty as more, for someone in law enforcement? It's more than just life, health, and safety. And instead, they're working in service, they're putting their lives on the line for a larger park idea. Now, an example just really quick. I used to work at a park called Tumacacri. It's in southern Arizona. It's an old Spanish mission park, and it's in ruin. If you went there as a visitor and you went through the gate, you'd be on the grounds, and in front of you would be this old adobe building, pretty well fallen apart. And there's no signage about what it is, no significance, no explanation of who was there, when they were there, what this place was all about. And you'd see someone picking up trash. You'd see someone else guarding the place. Why? Why are they there? What's so important about this that it's worth guarding? You have somebody in an office nearby reading about the place, but they're not talking to you because that's not their job. And they're not somebody else doing some kind of clerical function. Okay, so we have a governmental operation, but no reason for it to be there. That is the real situation in parks. It's not necessarily readily apparent why they're protected, and that's why you need interpreters to frame that, to say, at Tumacacri specifically, this is a place where people came together, drastically different cultures, to merge and make a third culture. A whole new cultural beginning happened in this place, and it was here for 200 years as an active site. It really is an amazing story at Tumacacri, but if without an interpreter to make that connection, how is anyone going to know? Now, several years back, I wrote a column for Ranger Magazine. In the piece, I put forward the idea that interpretation of park resources was the core function of the National Park Service. If you take interpretation out of a park, what are you left with? Think about Tumacacri. What would it be without interpretation? See, without the promotion of meaningful ideas inherent in a park, parks are just hollow, soulless, bureaucratic entities full of people and other lines of work going about their day, but no core reason for being there and no awareness of why they're there. It's just a job. But everyone's job can be so much more than that. So how does this involve the other professions outside of interpretation? It's my view that if you want to work for the Park Service, you need to see it as more than a job, and you need to, I think, to look for it for reasons more than just employment. And I think people should be thinking about it as they work. I am surprised with the number of employees in non-interpretive divisions who don't see their work as part of the park story. There are meanings inherent in a place, and they need the people to bring that story alive. How that story is brought alive takes a team doing many different things. What changed in my thinking since I wrote that column was the realization that all of our work, no matter the division, supports that larger concept. After my column was published, I received thank you notes from interpreters. They felt that I recognized their role in the park and I'd framed their work in a way they hadn't heard before. Yet I was excoriated by the ANPR president. He attacked me and charged me with arrogance. This after I had tried very hard in the piece to make sure I was inclusive and showed how all employees' work was necessary. He didn't like it that I posited that interpretation was the most mission-critical activity the Park Service does, even though I was clear, like I said, that all other divisions were essential. But here's where I had gone wrong. I had missed one big thing. While I had agreed that they had a place in running the operation, I had not incorporated their work in terms of how they contribute to the goal of communicating meaningful stories to the public. I realized that, in fact, most of the work done by the other divisions that I work with, it's not only underappreciated in that context of supporting the story of the park, but their work is also disconnected. And I think about that. I think, how much of that is institutional apathy toward, establishing some kind of connectedness to their supervisors, superintendent, not play a role in showing everyone how, they contribute? Or is it self-imposed disconnectedness? Like, I don't want to think about that. I'm just here to do a job. And I'm not sure the answer to that question, but either way, it makes me a little sad because everyone there does play a role in a very inspiring situation. So, it's my hope that we can move forward toward framing everyone's work in a larger context of why we're here and what we are here to do. Most work done in the Park Service may not directly provide interpretive services, but still, it provides a tangential interpretive service in a one or two step removed sort of way. So my assertion that interpretation is the most mission critical activity that the Park Service does is still true. What's changed is now I realize just how much other folks besides interpreters play a role in interpretation. Each employee indirectly influences the visitor experience, whether or not they ever meet the visitor. Really, if you think about it, someone building a trail is providing the public a pathway on which to walk, to pursue meaningful experiences. And that's just one example of an interpretive act that's one step removed from interpretation. Perhaps also arresting someone for defacing a petroglyph. That petroglyph will be there in the future for someone to see and have a meaningful experience with. All work done by the Park Service protects and preserves the interpretive meaning in a place. So my primary reason for speaking today is to say that I feel like this is where change needs to still happen. I think the Park Service needs to reframe the work of the other divisions in ways that ties everyone's work to larger meaningful ideas, not just laws, policies, and standard operating procedures. It's my view that all employees should see how their work does more than prop up a government operation. We don't just protect these places from the public or work in a bubble unaccountable to the public. Instead, each of us plays a role connecting people to meaningful resources through some sort of work. If interpretive leaders give other divisions this conceptual tool within which to frame their employees' work, it will expand, I think, how people see their work in a meaning-seeking context. Let's say a chief of interpretation recognizes an employee from another division and doesn't just thank them for their work, but makes it clear how their work benefited the meaning-seeking experience of the public. The second part of my thinking is that without interpretive services being front and center, meaningful ideas would stand mute and make parks irrelevant. This is something I want employees from other divisions to understand. Without active interpretation of resources, the repercussions of a non-interpreted, mute resource would make the work of all other divisions irrelevant. If the resource doesn't have apparent meaning and significance, why is everyone there? Interpretation at its core ensures that parks are relevant and funded because interpreters give voice to that inherent meaning. As long as the place is meaningful, the other 18,000 NPS employees not directly in interpretive jobs have jobs. So what if someone says, well, I can see some meaning here without ever going on an interpretive program? Well, that's true. But for one thing, your experience was probably impacted in a non-personal interpretive method. Um, but even if not, okay, um, let's just say that that's true. But you know what? The public isn't very good at making meaning out of things they don't understand. Thinking back to Tumacacri, how well versed is any of us on Spanish colonial history and the tribal frontier where these two cultures meet? Most people are not, yet they still might go there because they heard it was advertised. These resources are special, but they can't really speak for themselves because of their complexity. One of the things I think we've all heard is, the smarter a person gets, the more they realize they don't know. Yes, well, it takes a specialist to tell a good story, and it takes somebody who really is an expert to tell those who aren't experts why something might be significant. Maybe all visitors, yes, well, all visitors are budding interpreters. They're natural meaning seekers, but they still need a facilitator to help them along their meaning-seeking journeys. The world is too complex to go it alone. This is why all parks must have dedicated interpreters. Once a place or a building is identified as meaningful and becomes a park, that is a confirmation by the citizenry that the place has meaning, and the public hungers for these raw, meaningful materials that nourish our souls. Interpretation needs to be taken seriously. It is not just a throwaway job in the Park Service. I've never stopped thinking about that column I wrote 7 years ago, and it's why I'm updating this philosophy here today. I feel like I wasn't done, and I feel like I've grown quite a bit in coming around to understand a holistic perspective about the entire agency. The feedback I asked for, it forced me to review and challenge my claims and the arguments I made. I knew I needed to improve, and I sought out that change. I cross-checked my assumptions, and when it came right down to it, I came to grasp that true, the meaningful idea for a park did come first, then the park was formed, and then the daily work required to run the place came third. But it's that everyone involved component that I needed to figure out, that I didn't understand when I wrote the column the first time. That's how everyone supports the whole. So I think all of us need to step back and remember the big picture of why we're here. I personally appreciate how facilitating a public connection to park meetings flows through each and every park employee's work, no matter what their job. For the Park Service to move forward, interpreters must now recognize that they have a role to play not just with the public, but internally as well, by communicating how everyone plays a role. Interpreters must learn interdivisional management. Interpreters must strengthen their leadership skills. They must insist on parks being managed from an interpretive perspective, and they must be the voice of the meaning-seeking public when management decisions are made. And they must also give back. They must become adept at connecting the work of others to park meetings so that those other divisions see how their work positively supports the park resources and the visitor. Here's the challenge I pose to all of you in the audience. Interpreters have to move from just focusing on external audiences and see that their co-workers in parks are an audience too. Secondly, we need to integrate the work done by the rest of the employees in the agency and put it into a meaningful context relative to why the park was formed. As interpreters strongly position their work into agency culture in the next century, I believe this new focus will be a catalyst for the birth of a new agency paradigm where all employees understand that they work in service of the meanings inherent in park resources, not just the task at hand. This new paradigm would make clear how all work being done by everyone in the agency fits within a compelling, rallying framework. Once interpretation is ready to lead this movement inside the agency, it's my belief that everyone in the Park Service will willingly rally around a clear, compelling 21st century mission that we all work in service to ideas first, and that everyone's work is a sacred part of our sacred mission. Thank you.